talk about that later on.
Oh.
You have got a fan base here then.
The hype train has left the station.
How old did you say this was?
12 years.
12 years, yeah.
Man, it is good. We just threw all of that on the floor, and this man has no regard for safety. He is not wearing shoes. He could go down while using it.
And John's dead. Wow. That didn't take long at all, but I'm sure he'll come back. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back. It is another weekly whiskey on Tuesday night. John, good to see you, my friend.
You as well. Good, sir. How are you?
I am doing well. How about yourself?
Doing quite well. I got a little pour of our whistle missile pick going on here, and I'll tell you, I'm pretty excited about it.
Oh, good. Well, before we get to talking about whiskey, thanks for joining us, everybody. If you're drinking something nice, let us know in the comments. We'll catch up with you. But before we get started, we do have some Our Bourbon single barrel updates. Today, the Elijah Craig single barrel went on sale to those lucky winners of the lottery. Everybody else later this week, when those bottles are unclaimed, if there's a little bit of overflow, we will sell them off. On the plus side, this has been a huge week for news. We're going to hit some more Russell's Reserve. We're going to get a Wild Turkey Kentucky Spirit. We're going to hit up some Bullet. We're going to hit up some more Heaven Hill. Going to hit up Wilderness Trail. Things are getting crazy. Things are really heating up, and I hear there may be some roses involved, but we'll see. We'll see. And I think that's pretty much it.
Additionally, tonight, you've got another one to select.
That's right. Yeah, that's a really good lead-in for something I clearly almost forgot. Yeah, tonight we're picking a Nashville Barrel Company 8-year single barrel MGP rye at barrel proof. So join us after Weekly Whiskey tonight. We're going to change gears, flip the lights, flip the props, and we're going to go right into barrel selection modes. This is going to be an awesome night. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah. So who we chatting with tonight, John?
Tonight we have got interesting guests not from the whiskey industry. So we branched out here. I've got somebody who is a longtime bird hunter, dog trainer, and bullshitter extraordinaire. You may know him from the Hunting Dog podcast or from the MeatEater podcast or MeatEater TV show with Stephen Ranella. This is Ron Boehme from the Hunting Dog podcast. Ron, how are you?
If it was any better, it'd be against the law, guys. Thanks for
All right. That is an answer that we
Welcome.
like. Let's go ahead and dig up one of these banners here. Anybody in the chat, happy Tuesday to you all. Holy shit, how are you? And let us know what you're drinking, please. Oh, looks like we got a Penelope fan already.
Oh, Penelope was a good one.
Yeah, that's a very good one. Especially since the guys who blended that one are both funny and handsome.
Some would say.
Okay, I'll take what I can there. So, Ron, what are you sipping tonight?
Well,
Besides the obvious Miller Lite.
yeah, this will be the Chaser. And amazingly, a UPS truck showed up with this in my driveway today.
That's a weird thing for a UPS truck to be leaving in your driveway.
Probably
Interesting.
shouldn't have said that.
That's
the
weird.
The box said hot sauce.
Mhm.
I was a little now everybody knows from my podcast that in my Zoom rooms that no one's ever seen me. In fact, you guys, this might be the first video other than that one episode with Steve in the mountains.
Moonshine.
We had, I had that too. You're right. We had a couple of little airplane bottles. You guys tell me if this is, we'll go down a rabbit hole because you invited me on, so you're stuck with me for 30 minutes.
That's what I like.
I was over at my neighbor's house. This goes back 8 years ago, when I did that mountain grouse episode with Steve Ranella. And he found in a box a couple of airline bottles, the glass airline bottles of Crown Royal. And
Nice.
I said, I don't have it with me. I should have brought it off my dresser in the house. And the stamp on it said like 1968.
Oh, the old tax strips. Yeah.
Tax strip had a date on it. So I don't know. And I'm not a whiskey drinker, not a bourbon drinker, not a vodka drinker. I can drink more beer than most people can drink water. But after that hunt, we toasted. We each had this little, I said, Jerry, can I have them? He goes, yeah, you can have them. And can that whiskey be better, or is it just like it was in 1968, 40 years later? How does that work?
This is a very good topic, Ron. I like where you're going with this. Okay, so was that the same episode that one of you was eating out of the dog bowl?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. I'm familiar with it. If you guys haven't seen that one, it is on YouTube. You can check it out on the MeatEater YouTube. You can see Ron and Steve cooking up some, what was that? Dusky grouse?
Yeah, blue or dusky grouse and a couple of ruffed grouse that we got in the drainages on the way up the mountain. Yeah.
So these guys cook this up on the side by stream. They happened to jump a cow moose, I believe, while they were cooking dinner.
Yeah, we did.
And then they cheers with a couple of dusty old Crown Royal that Steve dug up from somebody's basement or something.
Right.
So to talk a little bit about that, so these would be called like dusties. Anything that is not a current bottling or currently available is called a dusty. Okay. So in the whiskey world, dusties are sought after. Like these people go to estate sales, yard sales. Like they're digging into these to try to find these old bottles because the profile is drastically different. And it's not necessarily that one is better than the other, but you can't get it anymore, right? Like, I mean, something that was bottled in 1968, you can't just go down to the store and pick up. No. So there's the nostalgia, there's the rarity, and then there's profile shift that you may or may not experience going from one to another. Jay, what's your take on some dusty stuff here? And I know DJ's going to chime in on the bottle that you've got there in front of you, Ron. That's a 2018 bottle. So it's not really a dusty, but it is a discontinued bottle. So it's going to be something else that'll be worth chatting about a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So one of my favorite dusties is actually those Crown Royals. Like Crown Royal now isn't, it's not bad, but it's not amazing. But what they were going on in the 60s and 70s were just incredible. I've had a 64, a 68, and I think a 72. And all three were really good. They were way better than they had any business being. So it's cool. Totally. That's one of my favorite dusties, and we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but it's fun to meet someone else that's kind of dug deep in the decades of Crown Royal, because there's a lot of good stuff happening back there. It's a fun history.
So are you saying that, I guess, because I was kind of poor, I got some ice, and I asked you before we started recording, I said, is it okay to do ice, or am I going to be looked down upon? But I thought about, wait a minute.
However you want it.
Whiskey Weekly, I'm going to be looked down every time I take a sip of this Miller Lite. So anyway, I put it on the rocks to cool it off a little bit. But would the flavor, I mean, not that I know flavor profiles or wine or anything, if I put that in a glass to one of you two, I'm assuming you have a pretty good palate for this. Would you go like, are you sure this is Crown Royal? Or would a Crown Royal drinker just think, oh, thank you?
It would be pretty evident. And mostly it's not because it ages in the bottle per se. Like, if it was bottled in 72, it's not like it goes on, like it undergoes some drastic change in those years. It's just that it was made very differently back then. Back in the 70s, the 60s, and later. It's kind of known as the glut. They were making a lot more whiskey than they were selling. And so they were putting a lot older whiskey. They were putting a lot better whiskey in cheaper bottles because they had nothing else to do with it. Now whiskey is extremely popular. So the day it hits the age that they need, they put it in. So it's younger. It's probably a little thinner. They're maybe cutting some corners. And that's that really big difference. I bet if you gave a Crown drinker today a 70s Crown bottling, like the richness would be like off the charts.
Yeah.
Totally.
I'm kind of embarrassed that I used it like a shooter. Then I should have sipped it.
Now, as long as you enjoyed it, that's all that matters, really.
I did.
It's not like you really knew going into it that you're going to be having something that was incredibly rare. So
no,
I think a huge difference too is probably the cooperage. I mean, you can't, if you think about whiskey that has to age in oak, the trees that were kicking around in the, we could say that is probably the early 60s when that was put into a barrel. If it was dumped and bottled in 68, just the logging industry alone, the difference that's happened over 50 plus years with that, I think changes the profile of the whiskey as much as anything else. I mean, it's just an entirely different era of making, well, everything, but specifically the whiskey in that case.
Huh. Well, I can tell you for first blush. Now I've been known to drink. I shouldn't even say that. I've not been known to drink whiskey. I've been known to have enough beer in me and finally ask somebody. I have this curious palate, which even though I go right back to light beer, my daughter and son-in-law, if you could be a foodie, they're a crafty with the craft beers.
Okay.
He even went, him and his dad had been making it in their garage for a decade before we had microbreweries coming up. And they actually made their own beer for the wedding reception,
Oh, that's cool.
And so they're very, and my daughter never had she wasn't even much of a drinker, which is odd for our gene pool. But
Right.
She literally learned to love all these different flavors of all these different beers, whether it's IPAs or ports or the whiskey. I mean, and my wife's the same way. She can drink all that stuff. And I've actually learned, like, one of my favorite beers was a sponsor for a little while, Perrin Black. I mean, it's so different than Miller Lite. It's not funny. And I started to acquire that palate a little bit for a craft beer. And so I have that cure, but usually it looks like this. Hey, let me, back before COVID, I said, all right, that thing's got an odd name. Let me just see what you're drinking, and that was a beer. But I always have this curious palate, and I'm telling you, if you knew my friends here, or when we have a euchre game, or when I'm on the road on a bird hunting trip, I will always, if it's somebody I know, and most people they're kind of like the old day smokers. Like, hey, you got a smoke? They're like, yeah, here's smoke, right? You mind if I take a sip? They're always like, yeah, here, take a sip of that. And and I'm very whiskey, bourbon, whatever you want to call it, curious. And I have sipped a lot of it. And every once in a while gets me in trouble. And I think it's probably because there's enough beer in me. My palate changes, and I'll get that. I'm like, make me one. No, that was good,
Yeah.
And of course, the next day I'm got a pretty good headache because of it.
Yep.
And but so I've appreciated. I don't understand how you can taste it all, the different wood, and the earth, or the wood, or the oak, or the fire barrels. I don't know if it came out of a house. Maybe whiskey out of a house fire is good. I'm not sure. Who knows? Maybe something that the firemen are into. We don't know. And maybe it's the first thing they do when they go clean up. Let's get to the whiskey cabinet. But I do appreciate it. Like, I'm not a connoisseur by any means, but I just like the nuance of it. It's kind of cool.
Absolutely, yeah. So has anything else stood out to you? I mean, you had the 1968 little Crown Royal airplane bottles that you enjoyed that time. Is anything else stood out to you, like maybe on a hunting trip or something? Like whether it was because it tasted great or because it tasted terrible or anything to that effect in the whiskey world that sort of left a mark on you? Yeah,
but you got to help me now. You remember, is whiskey and bourbon's bourbon? Or is it all?
Well, bourbon is whiskey. They all sort of fall into the same category: rye whiskey, bourbon whiskey, Scotch whiskey, things of that nature.
I was doing a job in Germany, and I traveled for a living, putting in construction equipment, actually putting in a lot of food equipment like fillers and palletizers and things. And they sent me over to Germany a couple times to measure up this machine, and the salesman. So I was, there was no Miller Lite there, and the beer wasn't even warm, wasn't even cold. It was tepid, but it wasn't cold. And I quickly developed that taste for that beer in that bar we were in. And he said, "You mind if I get you a drink?" And I'm like, "Oh, I got one." He goes, "No, a drink." And so you're gonna have to help me with this. Johnny Walker comes in different label colors, right?
Yep, correct.
Blue, green. I don't know them all. What's the highest one?
Blue.
As in dollar wise, it would be blue.
Blue. Okay, so then I got the right one. So now again, I'm in Germany and I've been at the plant all day and I'm talking with this guy. I'm like, "Oh, I feel like I'm shitting in high cotton." He comes back with this glass. It was on the rocks, and I had enough beer in me, and I kind of went. I was like, "Oh my God!" And I did it again, and I actually had 2 glasses of it on the rocks, and I didn't have an adverse effect in the moment. Yeah, so tell me how that happened, or was it all a placebo and I was just in Germany? I don't know.
I think you were well hydrated, my friend. That's usually what it comes down to.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
It's interesting because a lot of people swear And I drink a lot of spirits instead of whiskey, and they say tequila always kills me. Like something about tequila just makes me. And I'm like, probably because tequila is very easy to drink, and you drink a lot of it
Right.
when you
Yeah.
do.
You drink 19 of them and then you break your fucking soul.
Yeah. There's no real difference. Whatever you consume is what you consume. But things like hydration, what you've eaten that day, even kind of your mood, all kind of play into how your body's going to react or not react, and how the next day is going to go.
Might have got a little bit lucky with the ABV too. Just, I mean, generally speaking, Scotch is frequently lower in alcohol than a bourbon would be.
Well, that makes sense too.
So having two drinks that were Johnny Walker's 80 proof, correct?
Yeah. The
remember.
blue is at least.
Yeah, I'm not super checked out on Johnny Walker, but I believe it's 80 proof. So I mean, 2 pours of that on the rocks, you know, melting down, a little bit of water in there, maybe 4 or 5 beers to help wash it down.
Yeah. And that's where kind of bourbon can get dangerous sometimes, because some of these, you know, we're drinking, the one I'm drinking is 61%. Like that adds up pretty quick. But Johnny Walker Blue at 40%, like you can get some more mileage out of that before it really comes for your ass.
Yeah, having 80 proof as opposed to 120 proof will definitely it'll wake you up in a different way, that's for sure.
Some nights John and I will do what's known as a flight. We'll like compare a couple of things, and sometimes just as pure happenstance, it comes out that they're like 61, 65, and 63% ABV. And then the next day we text each other like, I feel a little foggy, bro. Like
I'm trying to peel my eyes open in the morning.
Like, why could that be? Oh, okay. We drank some like high proof stuff last night, but yeah, it'll come for you.
What is I see a comment over here from Rare Bird. Ethanol is ethanol? What does that mean? Is that a whiskey joke?
Oh, no, he's basically saying
that go ahead with it, Jay. You got it.
He's basically saying what we covered is that when you drink booze, you drink booze. It doesn't matter where it came from or what it was distilled from. If you drink 40% alcohol whiskey, it's going to affect you the same as 40% alcohol tequila. But if you drink 40% alcohol tequila and 70% bourbon, one of those is gonna really sneak up on you. Yeah.
So how about the myth of, you know, mixing? If you go to a place and you guys found out, now neither of you live anywhere near the Bourbon Trail down in Kentucky, right? I mean, you've probably been, I would assume. I mean, I've drove down the road and I see all the distilleries. If you started with this wild turkey that I've got, and I'm telling you what, my family, when they get home, this will be gone. I can tell you that.
Good, that's what it's
very, very much appreciated. If you start with this, okay, this is wild turkey, Kentucky Spirits, single barrel. If you start with that, can you go to another brand, or does that make a difference?
Sure. Oh, totally.
Okay.
But in a good way. I mean, sometimes it's good to just get bare. So, I mean, especially that wild turkey Kentucky Spirit is a single barrel product, meaning they take the barrel of bourbon out of the warehouse, they dump it and bottle it as is.
Okay.
I mean, they proof it down to 101, but I mean, they're bottling just that one barrel, and then they go grab another barrel and do the same thing over and over. So you're getting, you know, somewhere between 160 to 210 bottles out of the barrel at that age.
Yeah.
And so you're going to be, each single barrel that you pick up from a store could be slightly different because it's just one barrel of whiskey aging. So sort of like the allure of a single barrel product is that it's never going to be the exact same thing. It's going to, you know, meet the same criteria for, it's going to be to a standard, but they're not going to be the same. So like Jay and I, what we do a lot is purchase single barrels. So we will get sent like a flight of samples, each one from a different barrel from a distillery. We sample through them right there like he's got in his paw. We'll sample through them and see which one we like the best. We pick it, then we buy the whole thing, bottle it up, and then sell it to the community.
Wow.
So that's like a pretty big thing in the whiskey world. This is single barrel bourbon. So that's why I wanted to make sure that when I sent you one, I wanted it to be, or when that kindly UPS driver decided to leave you one.
When you brought hot sauce today,
he delivered some hot sauce to you. It just happened to it was the fixings to make a hot sauce there, a bourbon-based hot sauce. It was just to give you that single barrel experience.
I like, it's not going to be a habit, but a lot of this might be gone before my wife or family gets back in a week. So, you know, I'm not
good.
And I just saw the analogy. So I see single barrel. I've heard single barrel and never knew what it meant, that it was a single barrel. And, you know, kind of goes to my love of wing shooting, right? So I wouldn't shoot a single barrel shotgun unless I was learning and I was a kid. Is there a double barrel, or that doesn't work that way?
No, actually, that's a really convenient segue. So there are a lot of places. It's mostly known as secondary maturation or finishing. So a lot of places will occasionally combine two barrels, put it into one. They don't really call it double barrel, but that's exactly what it is. But a lot of times people will take a single barrel and they will. Bourbon has to always be initially matured in virgin oak. So it has to be fresh, charred American oak. But sometimes they want a little bit different flavor, and they will dump that barrel into something, maybe a wine cask. Maybe they'll dump it into another new American oak barrel to give it some extra oak. Maybe they'll put it in a toasted barrel. And that's literally quite known as double maturation or double barrel or double cask. And that would fit right in with your choice manufacturer of double barrel. But double barreling is actually very common in whiskey. It's probably, it's probably it's probably more common than a single barrel, if I had to guess.
Just like hunting the grouse woods, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Anybody who knows what they're doing uses a double barrel.
Single barrel bourbon, double barrel shotgun.
Okay.
Here we go.
Wow, you're just whipping up mottos. That's great.
I've been saying it for a long time. I got lucky to get to break it out here tonight. Ron, have you been to the Great American Beer Festival, and what are your thoughts? From Paul Clark in the chat.
I have not. I've been to Oktoberfest in Germany, which I did not sample a lot of beers, and I've never seen anybody. Why in God's name they bring you a stein that's I don't know, 30 ounces, 24 ounces, I don't know what it is.
It's a liter usually, I think.
It's
a half.
No problem with that. I don't know where that is, but I know they call Grand Rapids area like Beer City, USA. So I would go because of, I told you, my daughter and son-in-law. The only beer I can pretty much not want to try. If it says IPA, that still has a bite or something to me that doesn't agree with my palate.
Okay.
But if it's a Weiss beer, any of the Pilsners, even some odd ones, I would go to one. Where is that at, American Beer Festival?
That is in Denver, Colorado.
And
it's kind of fun. Like beer festivals, they usually, like IPAs are super hot in America, but there's beer festivals usually encompass everything, whether it's, very traditional German lagers or Weiss beers, or, you got your big stouts and porters, and, the hipsters hamming it up with their IPAs and triple IPAs and sextuple IPAs. And
yeah, I've seen all those. Yeah.
I used to be a big beer guy, and then I got fat and I switched to whiskey, and I'm still not skinny, but it's not nearly as bad as it used to be.
Not growing like you were though, right?
The beer world was interesting. Yeah. Now I'm a whiskey guy.
Well,
there was another good comment that came through. Oh, it was Lee Holt was making a reference to, I'm guessing probably Ron's swimming stories of growing up.
You say it, John. If you want to hear it, I can tell it.
Oh, absolutely. This will be great.
Well, so growing up in the Chicago city limits, I had no idea that, it was just by chance that I happened to be born there. And I went to Chicago public schools. We had kindergarten and first grade in a little building that was actually there was so many baby boomer kids that they actually bought some houses, tore them down, and put up a kindergarten, first grade school, just because the grade school wasn't going to be able to handle it. So then we went to William Owen School, and that was second grade through eighth grade, where a lot of people grow up. You have middle school, and then so you kind of start hanging out with older kids instead of just going through that hierarchy. Oh, I'm in eighth grade, I'm good. And then you start high school in Chicago. Boom, you start out at the bottom of the totem pole. And Jimmy Karras's sister, Bonnie, was walking with us to school. First day to high school. And, it was a little under a mile walk, but that's what we did. And it would have took me longer to get to the bus and take a bus. So we always walked. And she goes, oh, boy, are you guys in for a surprise? And she was a sophomore or maybe a junior that year. And we're all kind of excited to go to high school. And she goes, in gym class, you swim naked. We're like, oh, right. And she's like, just wait. And we're like, Bonnie, come on. She goes, I'm telling you, I've been going to the school for 2 years and I hear all the boys talk about it. And Jimmy and I go, no, she's pulling our leg. I mean, she was, this is terrible. She wasn't old enough, but she was a little older than us. and we might have got our first run from a liquor store from a friend of hers. So we kind of believed in her a little bit. And sure enough, after the first couple of days of school, we get our schedule and we got gym class. And in Chicago Public Schools, swim class was at least once a week. Sometimes a year it was more than once a week. And sure enough, swim class comes in. We just went to gym class, and it happened to be swim class that day. And you could have seen the look in everybody's eyes when he says, all right, you guys jump in the showers and go down the corridor. We'll meet you in the pool. And we're like, I don't have a swimsuit. Coach, I don't have a swimsuit. Everybody's starting a little bit of panic. And this happened from my dad's day. My dad was born in 1917. Okay. This has been happening in Chicago Public Schools for the entire century up till when I went there. And you go in the shower, you shower up, and I don't want to make an analogy, but you're very scared. You feel like you're in your first day in prison, and I've never been. And you're showering, and the worst part is, I was born October 30th, so I was younger, up to almost a year younger, and at 13, not so much going on yet, and we have to go march into this pool room. 45 of us sitting there buck-ass naked on a fucking wooden bench. And we are literally, most of us are scared out of our skin, okay? And coach comes up, he starts walking. Of course, he's got khaki pants on and a high school shirt on, got a whistle. He says, we are going to teach you blah, blah, blah. We are looking for candidates for swimmers, and if you're not, you're still going to learn to swim in this school. And he would pick, there were 6 starting posts. And I remember I was about, 3 groups later and calls the first 6 people up. And you don't know if you're supposed to go, do we watch them dive?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do we look? Do we not look?
And then if you're looking like this, you're looking at your partner down here to the left or the right. It's like being at a urinal, only way more uncomfortable. And for 4 years, I got very used to being naked in a swimming pool with other men. And people, I guarantee you, somebody Google that right now. Hey, look at that. David Funk. My uncle has a similar story from Detroit Public Schools. I've heard about it in Milwaukee. Now I've heard about it in Detroit. I want to have a class action lawsuit against Chicago Public Schools.
Probably wouldn't get a dime out of them, man. Well,
they don't have any money, right? But I'm telling you, it was traumatic. It was traumatic. I would tell friends from Oak Lawn High School, Evergreen High School, we are on the fringe of Chicago, and they're like, yeah, right, you do. I'm like, hey, this wasn't my idea. The girls got to go. The girls had a swimsuit. They couldn't bring in their own. It was a school-issued swimsuit. It was a one-piece,
sure,
kind of baggy. And to bring that all around to, I got married once for a very short time in 1980, and I'll leave her name out of it. But when I started dating her, and I knew her in high school for some classes and everything, when that time came, she goes, I saw you and everybody. Me and my girlfriends would get on each other's shoulders and look in the windows at swim times. So think about that. Wasn't fair.
She knew what she was getting into.
Yeah. And she still married me. It's possible that she saw me somewhere around junior year, though, because if she saw me in freshman year, probably would have been a check off the list. Yeah.
It's always good to measure progress,
right? Of any sort.
That's amazing. Oh man. Well,
it's interesting that you still haven't bought a swimsuit yet to this day, though.
Well, I don't think we need to talk about that.
Fair enough.
Right.
Oh man, it's funny because I wear board shorts most of the year, even though Wisconsin gets a little bit cold. But a good pair of swim trunks will get you a long ways in life, at least. Right.
So.
Oh yeah, Soggy Dog decided to show up and make sure that we get the swimming naked story. Yeah, perfect. Seeing some familiar names come through there from the Hunt and Dog podcast.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely golden. Of all the Ron stories that I was expecting that we might break out tonight, the swimming naked at school one wasn't on my list.
Yeah,
I'm glad it came up though.
Well, it's kind of a badge of honor at some point. When you get now at my age, you don't care, but I'm telling you what, at 13,
you care a whole lot.
Yeah, you care a lot.
Yeah, you care a whole lot. Yeah, I didn't even have a mustache to speak of until and it would have been like a little bitty, fuzzy. I call it like an Amish mustache. Just
just a bit wispy.
Because they won't give those kids razors because they'll cut their throats. But there was not a lot of development going on at 13 years old in the Boehme genetic pool. I can tell you that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And you get to bear it all for the school. That's just absolutely ducky.
Man, that's great. So we're kind of rolling up on the half of the hour here, but I'm curious, what do you that Kentucky Spirit's been sitting on ice for a few? What do you think? Is it up your alley? Not so much?
I would not say not so much.
Okay.
I would say that when this is, and I put quite a few ounces in there.
Yeah.
I would say it's going to be finished for sure. And I do find it, again, not being a whiskey drinker, to me, the minute a little bit of ice melts in there, it just goes down because typically my biggest problem has always been, if you want to go back to high school or 20s and 30s or me, your 40s, your 50s, now I'm in my 60s. A lot of people's experiences are around a campfire sometime, right? Boom, little pull here, little pull there. And if you did this midday or 4 o'clock when I have a beer, if I were to just take a sip of warm like that, I feel like not heartburn, but
yeah.
Right? Is that normal or does that go away?
Yeah,
there's a name for that.
Yeah, lay it on him, John. Yeah, it's good.
That's the Kentucky hug.
I like it.
Yeah, that's good. It warms you up from the inside out.
Well, it did that. That.
Okay.
But, that's absolutely perfect.
And I really appreciate this. And like you said, the what'd you call this bottle? The tail fan?
Yep, that's the fantail bottle. Not unlike a Ruffed Grouse on full display, or in this case, obviously a wild turkey.
Yeah, in this case, a wild turkey, but it certainly reminds me of a grouse tail fan. So I don't know when I can tell you this bottle will be empty. I can make a prediction, but the bottle's going to go up on the shelf of all the knickknacks. You can't see all my knickknacks from here, but I've got knickknacks all over the walls of my house in Virginia, which I used to use for work, and my other walls in the kennel, and my office in the house. So this bottle will not hit the trash. This bottle,
perfect.
And it won't be for change and dimes and pennies and quarters either.
Awesome.
Absolutely
well, that's
great.
A historic bottle now. It is discontinued, and they're not making it anymore.
Can we go an extra minute? I do have a question for you guys. I just
fire away.
Yeah, lay it on us.
Right here. Now, this is God. I can't believe I thought of this right now. I'll leave this out of the picture for a second. No, I shouldn't leave it out of the picture. Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah. This
has been in my possession. My dad died in 1998. Okay. He was a little older dad when he had me. And, he made it to a good life. He made it to 80. And he was a Drury's guy and Seagram 7 guy. It was what he could afford. We were very, I'd say, very lower middle class. We didn't starve. We didn't miss a meal.
Sure.
But as he got older, and he was a cigar smoker, and as he got older, like his son-in-law, my sister's husband, would get him a good bottle of something. And he honestly, when he would get a bottle of something, a smile would come on his face like, oh, I can't wait to have that, And when we cleaned out his condo, this bottle was almost full. And every year on November 20th, when he died, I just take a little like that out of it. And so there's been 20 some out of this thing. Now, here's the question. I was showing somebody this, and I said, this bottle is going to be empty. It can go on a shelf. And this guy said, why don't you get another bottle of Pinch, put it in there, because then it's still like a piece of the same whiskey, you know? And I'm not worried about the flavor. So I don't know. You think I should just empty it and put it on the shelf or add some Pinch to it?
I would say so. So Pinch is a blended Scotch whiskey. The new stuff is almost assuredly not nearly as good as the old stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder, there's no date on this, but well, it's 15 years old, and I nabbed it from his house in 1998. So
I would say that looks like a very not antiquated, but it's not a recent bottling. Yeah. I would I mean, the only thing I wouldn't do is mix the old stuff with the new stuff.
Okay.
I would finish that guy off because the stuff you have now is going to be light years ahead of Pinch on the market now. But you know, there's no shame if you finish that guy off and rinse it out and you want to use it as a decanter for a modern bottling of Pinch for that sentimental feel. Nothing wrong with that at all, and it'll hold just fine.
Another way you could look at that too is sort of what you're describing, Ron, is called like in the whiskey geek circles is called an infinity bottle. Oh, whereby the bottle is never empty, so you're adding to it as you go, right? So you've got, like, let's say you drink that thing down to there's maybe 1 or 2 ounces in the bottom. It's almost gone, but you want to preserve that whiskey, that memory, that legacy. Add, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be Pinch. It could be whatever it would be that you would enjoy having a little bit of, and you could add back to it from there. So this is just, I'm kind of giving the other side of the coin from what Jay recommended. Mm-hmm. Finishing that in and of itself would probably be great and special. Yeah. The other side of the coin would be to add to it as you go. So you could add more Pinch or something else to it to create this infinity bottle. So the little bit of Pinch that's in there now is never technically gone. And you could always just keep adding a little bit to it as you go. So the thing, I mean, it could always remain full. And just adding a little bit here as you go. So like a lot of guys will do that with like the end of a bunch of bottles. Like they'll have a decanter and there's like a bottle here with 2 ounces, a bottle with 1 ounce, a bottle with 3 ounces. You just kind of put them all together and then they all kind of live on, and it's your infinity bottle project.
I like the name. It reminds me of Infinity Wars.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, so it really kind of depends. If you're looking to preserve the character of that sentimental bottle, don't mix it. If you're looking for something fun, and if you buy 10 bottles of whiskey a year and you add 1 ounce from each bottle, you have a half bottle of a blend and you can see how it changes and matures and differs every time you taste it.
Yeah. And then technically your old man's whiskey is still in there too. So you kind of like, it still lives on, even though it's totally different. It's not the same whiskey.
Right.
But what was once his whiskey is still always there.
Right.
Yeah.
At least symbolically, too. It's just a cool way to kind of mess with it. There's more than one way to approach it for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, guys. That gave me some ideas.
Yeah,
certainly.
I'm glad I thought about that. Now, who I hide this from is going to know by the fact that I got up from my desk and I went behind me. I got to find a new hiding place for this.
Tuck that thing away someplace else now. There was another one. I think it was Soggy Dog posted they were going to bring you a 1792 to try next time you guys meet up.
Oh yeah, those full proofs are great.
Oof. So we're going to totally convert Ron into a whiskey guy. I can already tell.
I'm feeling it.
It could happen. It could happen.
Yeah, we'll have to line up a hunting trip here in Maine, Ron, and get you out here to the North Maine woods. We'll bust up some bottles and some birds.
I've been invited by there's a you might have heard of it. It's the Old Pat Society. It's a bunch of old partridge hunters that it's kind of like their own little fraternity, and they add in a few people, usually a nephew, son, cousin, uncle. And it's a small group of guys, but they've been getting together forever. And I had been invited to get up to Maine. So, hey, maybe.
Be a good idea.
That'll be fun. You guys can be the in the field correspondents, and I'll be back here stuffy in the office.
That's right. Back to you, Jay. We're busy.
Jay. Thank you. Back to you, Jay.
We're busy with whiskey. Back to you,
We'll
Jay.
get you the microphones. That'll be perfect.
Yeah. Perfect. So, Ron, if you just want to give a quick plug here for your podcast and your show, what you got going on here, we'll try to wrap this thing up here and direct the audience your way.
Yeah. So anybody who is a bird hunter or likes to hear somebody occasionally just tell stories on the tailgate while we're mostly drinking beer, but don't some of my friends in North Dakota who might be listening, they go through they're into, like, they will find the Pappy Winkle, Peppy.
Van Winkles, yeah.
Yeah,
They get into that.
you wouldn't be referencing Tyler, would you?
Yes, Tyler. Yeah, you know that. And so my podcast, it's in its 7th year, the Hunting Dog Podcast. I started to kind of I'm not good at keeping hunting diaries, and I started it to say, someday because of the internet, my grandkids that are now on the ground, they weren't even conceived yet, that somebody says, I wonder what grandpa was like. I would have loved to have a conversation that my dad and his buddies after World War II were sitting around playing cards. I would love to have that audio track just to hear the banter and hear the laughing. And
Totally.
so I thought someday my grandkids, somebody says, oh, I wish you were, because I don't remember my mom's or my dad's dad. And I would love to hear his voice. So it kind of started out like that. And then I didn't realize what it would turn into. And now it's my full-time job. Yeah. So if you're into bird hunting or if you're into just a good time, you can pick and choose from the episodes, and you can find it anywhere, iTunes, Stitcher, podcast, any of the podcast apps. And Spotify is the hot one. And yeah, look up Hunting Dog Podcast, give it a listen. And that's that.
All right.
Love it.
Thank you so much, Ron. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you're looking for more information on John, find him at the Bourbon Finder. He has American whiskey reviews, head-to-heads, some great articles. I am Jay from Whiskey Raiders. So if you're looking for your one-stop shop for whiskey reviews, drop on by. And yeah, this has been another awesome weekly whiskey on Tuesday. If you're looking for after hours, that will drop on Thursday morning, as always. And for those of you in the audience that are into single barrels, join us in about 15 minutes or so, and we'll be hitting up a Nashville Barrel Company single barrel selection. So this has been a great time, guys. Thank you for everyone who joined us. Ron, hope you enjoy the rest of that fantail, and cheers. Thanks for everything.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.